Good morning. Start with the fourth reading, Parsha Bahar. It's also joint with Bechukotai, but that's not for now. So we're just going to read where I'm at, which is verse 39, chapter 25. Because these verses and chapters are not Jewish in origin, but we'll put that aside for a different time. Okay. And if your brother becomes destitute with you, again, we're talking about not necessarily your biological brother, we're talking about anybody who's a part of the Jewish people, part of the Hebrew nation, a part of our nation, because again, the word Yehudi does not appear in the Torah in the 5 books of Moses. So it's anybody who is literally your brother, anybody who's part of the Jewish people, anybody who's a convert to the Jewish people and to the Hebrew nation, and anybody who lives in Israel and is obeying the laws, is a resident in the country, this would apply. Okay, so if your brother becomes destitute with you and is sold to you, because they did have slavery, is in the Torah, something to discuss at a different time. Do not work him with slave labor. Okay, so you're not supposed to work him too hard, apparently. As an employee or a hired resident, he shall be with you until the Jubilee year. He shall work for you. So again, back to this Jubilee. So the Jubilee, the slaves go free. Okay. Then he shall leave you and his children with him, and he shall return to his family and resume the status of his fathers. So he goes out a free person as he was before. And why is this? For you are my servants, whom I brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you shall not be sold as slave. They shall not be sold as a slave is sold. This is because Hashem, God, brought the Hebrew nation out of Egypt, out of slavery. So this is why we have slaves and can have slaves, or at least in the Torah time period could. We have to treat them differently than other nations treated their slaves, and how slaves were treated in history, historically. Okay. You shall not work him. You shall not work him with rigor, and you shall fear your God. That's like your God. Like God is very personal in the Torah. The Torah always says you, and God to you, and your God. And so we have to believe. It's not like God's up there in heaven, up in the Shemaim. And no, God. Every human being, every person has a personal relationship with God. It's your God. It's my God. I have a personal relationship with God. You have a personal relationship with God, and God has a personal relationship with you, and God has a personal relationship with me. And apparently, God has the ability to do that. Okay, your male slave or your female slave who you may have from the nations that are around you, from them you may acquire a male or female slave. So you could have slaves from any of the countries that are around Israel, or I guess anywhere from the world. And also from the children of the residents that live among you. So there's people that are living here or living nearby that are not residents. So, there was this concept of citizenship in the Torah. And residency, what does that mean, a resident? So if there's this tourist traveling through Israel, can he be I guess he gets captured in a war, could he be sold as a slave? It's an interesting question. Okay. And from their family that is with you, whom they begot in your land, they shall become your inheritance. So if you have a slave from the other nations and they have children, those children belong to you and not to the mother and to the father of that child. It's very interesting. Not sure why there's this difference there, but okay. So we don't have slavery anymore. So that's we'll just put this whole slavery thing aside, because it's one of those things about the Torah that people get really upset about, and rightfully so, because slavery is horrible. You should hold on to them as an inheritance for your children after you as acquired property, and may thus have them serve you forever. But as for your brethren, the children of Israel, a man shall not work his brother with rigor. So there are different rules for different people. One Torah, different rules for different people. If a resident non-Jew, okay, again, the Torah, this translation is really bothering me that keeps on using Jew. Okay, but if a resident non-Ivri gains wealth with you, okay, so this is somebody who's not an Ivri and then gets wealthy, and your brother becomes destitute with him and is sold to this resident non-Ivri among you, or to an idol of the family of the non-Ivri. I don't know what does that mean that you could sell something to an idol. After he's sold, he shall have redemption. One of his brothers shall redeem him. Okay, so if I become poor, God forbid, and I get sold into and I get sold to slavery to somebody who's not an Ivri, I'm hoping that somebody will redeem me. I've got a big family. Come on, guys, get me out of this situation. Or his own. Okay, so after he sold one of his brothers, so this is immediate brothers, or his uncle or his cousin shall redeem him, or the closest relative from his family shall redeem him, or if he becomes able to afford it, he can redeem himself. So you get wages while you're a slave, and then if you could buy your way out of it, it's like you posting bail to get out of jail. You know, in the United States, people are like sitting in jail because they can't, and they're just accused of, they're convicted of a crime. It's often nonviolent crime, and they're just sitting there and they can't get out because they can't afford bail. That's going on right now in the United States. There's millions of people in the United States in jail because they can't afford bail. Like they can't get out. They can't afford. They went to trial. They were convicted, but then they were, they have bail instead of like $100,000 and they can't get out, so they're trapped. This is really happening actually in 2020 in the United States. Okay, so people, here we have like, here if you get stuck, you don't have money, somebody in your immediate family or, somebody, should come and get you out, post bail for you. This is what this is. He shall calculate with the purchaser the number of years from the year of his being sold until the Jubilee year. Then the purchase price shall be divided by the number of years as the days of a hired worker. He shall be with him. So again, this Jubilee calculation comes into the picture when it comes to having a Hebrew slave because they get released on the Jubilee. If there are still many years according to them, he shall return his redemption money out of the money from which he was purchased. Okay. But if only a few years remain until the Jubilee year, he shall make the same calculation according to his years that remain until Jubilee, he shall return the redemption money. He shall be with him as an employee hired year by year. He shall not enslave him with rigor in your sight. And if he is not redeemed through any of these ways, he shall go out in the Jubilee year, he and his children with him. So no matter what, at the end of the time, we'll get this Jubilee. Apparently the Hebrew slaves are set free. And I think the residents, and of course anybody converts to the Hebrew nation would be under this category. But apparently a non-resident slave doesn't get released in the Jubilee. I have to check into that. Okay, that's a good question. Do the non-resident slaves get released in Jubilee? I think the answer is no. Okay, for the children of Israel are servants to me, not me, Daniel Rosenthal, but to God. Okay, for the children of Israel are servants to God. They are my servants, who I took out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And this is the underlying reason for everything in the Torah is I am the Lord your God. That is the ultimate reason for all this, every single line, every single word. If it doesn't make sense to you, if it's hard, if it comes across as harsh, or doesn't sit well with you, take it up with God. Like what could you do? You can only get so upset at the author. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, the way people carry out these words, we can get upset about that because oftentimes, people, most of the time, people make, let's just call them mistakes, errors in judgments. And they think that they know what these words mean, and then they take the words literally, and you're not supposed to all the time. There's all kinds of, there's interpretation through rabbinical teachings in the Mishnah and the Talmud. And you can't just go around you know, doing whatever you want and thinking that the Torah supports it or that God supports it, more importantly. All right. Have a good day.